Logos are something of an unsung hero in the gaming world. Everyone talks about the gameplay or the art style, but people never bring up the titular typography that may have subconsciously enticed them to try the game in the first place. A good logo is like the bow on a game's presentation, the cherry on top that shows the dedication a dev team has to not just the big things, but the small things as well. Usually a good logo is an indication of a good game, a trend evidenced by one of the most storied developers in gaming history. Valve was on an absolute killing spree during the 2000s and early 2010s, releasing banger after banger after banger without a single miss in their record. Until a certain card game, that is. And every single one of their games had not just great gameplay, but great presentation and art direction as well, a fact reflected in each of the game's logos. And being the typography nerd I am, I want to go through every single major Valve franchise and talk about the design of each of their logos. Because every single one, no matter how many times you see it, always has something secret, something you've never noticed before. Let's start with a weird one, a logo that doesn't actually come from a video game. What on earth is the Steam logo supposed to be? It looks like a couple of dots connected to form an incomplete triangle or something like that. But no, this seemingly random shape has a bit more to it than meets the eye. Looking at its history reveals that this logo wasn't always the circular style version that we have today. In 2014 it was changed from this. This elongated, slightly more complex form of the Steam logo helps reveal its hidden meaning. The shape is meant to resemble the piston mechanism attached to the flywheel on an actual steam engine. This particular part of the engine is what helps the wheel continue moving, a small part in a bigger mechanism. In the same way, Steam is a service that facilitates the production and release of other games, a tiny piece that's invaluable in making the distribution of video games as simple as possible, a small part in a bigger mechanism. Moving to an actual game, the famous TF2 symbol is hotly debated in terms of its origin. Many believe it to be the negative space of a valve, referencing the developers of the game, but this is likely not the case. The titular valve in Valve's logo, which we will get to later, is made up of too many spokes to be what's being mimicked here. Instead, the more likely origin is that of a crosshair. But more interesting than the crosshair itself is who the crosshair belongs to. Looking around at the various crosshair designs given to the different classes' weapons, there are a handful of them that closely resemble the crosshair present in TF2's logo. I think it's most likely that the logo is meant to resemble specifically the heavy stock minigun crosshair, as the proportions seem to match up the best. This theory is further bolstered by Heavy being TF2's mascot in the majority of the game's promotional material. It's crazy to think that even the default TF2 logo features a reference to the heavy weapons guy. He truly is a part of everything. Moving right along to a more straightforward one, we have Portal. Obviously the O in the word Portal has been replaced with a stylized version of the portals that Chell uses in the game. You might think there's nothing else to discover, but oh my friend, you have no idea. In an effort to discover more about the Portal logo, I decided to find the font that's used for the rest of the letters that aren't the O, and oh boy, I had no idea what I would find. This font is called Pyrocynical, and was created by none other than the government of Nunavut, the Canadian province. No, I am not joking. The font in the logo for Portal is intellectual property of the Canadian government. It was commissioned by the Nunavut government to bridge communication between the 4 primary languages that are spoken in the Canadian Arctic. This font, of all fonts, is the one Valve deliberately chose as the basis for the Portal logo. Now, I doubt this has any significance to the game itself or its lore. Obviously, the game doesn't take place in Canada if the ending is anything to go by. But it doesn't answer the question of how on earth Valve stumbled upon this font when choosing the design of the Portal logo. Like seriously, they could have gone with any number of sans serif fonts on the planet Earth, but they chose this one. The only real connection I've got is the font's use in Microsoft Translator, but it's still an absolutely wild pull for a font to use in a logo for a video game. Taking a very large step away from the insanity that is Portal for a second, let's discuss the images that used to appear at the beginning of every game Valve ever produced. It's dark, it's iconic, it's... The history behind this splash screen is actually incredibly interesting, as it demonstrates the way in which Valve has changed over the years. While the logo used in Valve's new splash screen is just the word Valve written in negative space, showing the more corporate Valve that's prevalent today, The Valve of the past used a more creepy, stylized picture of a man with an actual valve erupting from his head, consistent with the style of games Valve was making at the time. Though the far more iconic version of this photo features the valve on the back of the man's head, an older equivalent shows a different man with a valve coming out of his eye. According to aTRUEwinnerONE, a former Valve employee, these two images were supposed to be viewed as companions to one another. When read one after the other, they mean, open your eyes, open your mind. This rather ominous mantra seems to suggest that looking at Valve's games, opening one's eyes, would cause someone to feel inspiration, opening their mind. Based on the massive amount of influence Valve has had on the gaming industry, this quote managed to be both creepy and prophetic. Moving from the old to the modern, Valve's new game, Deadlock, has a logo that certainly invites speculation on its deeper meaning. Not to mention the title of the game, at first glance, seemed to be a rather generic name to give a hero shooter. It's the tried and true method of smashing two words together to create a brand new word, joining its brothers Overwatch and Battleborn. However, as I researched the game and its lore, I believe there's a little more to this symbol than meets the eye. While we don't know too much about the plot of Deadlock and its lore, we can piece together from in-game info that the key conflict of the game is between a variety of different factions and groups vying for power over and over again. A literal deadlock. In addition, there's also a potential double meaning when the symbol is added into the mix. The eye is clearly being surrounded by what looks like a crosshair, meaning someone has a lock on the eye, and when they shoot, the person will be killed dead.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Okay, look, I know that it's really silly when you put it that way, but I genuinely do think that that's what they were going for, and thought it was worthwhile enough to put in the video. So, don't shoot me. Next, I'm going to knock out two birds with one letter-shaped stone. A Greek letter, in fact. The classic Half-Life Lambda has a meaning that's well documented in the series that it comes from. In-universe, the Lambda symbol is from a segment of the Black Mesa facility, known as the Lambda Complex, hence why it's displayed on Gordon Freeman's suit. However, on a more metaphorical level, the Lambda symbol is utilized to represent radioactive decay in the chemical equation for a substance's half-life. As a logo, this has to be one of the most succinct and fleshed out examples of how to do one right. While most people probably know this connection, what you might not know is that the original Counter-Strike symbol was also meant to resemble a lambda, as a reference to the other Valve game that had been released at the time. Over time, this symbol slowly became less and less lambda-like, eventually transforming into something almost unrecognizable by comparison. It's like a typographical version of telephone, as different designers attempt to imitate the one that came before, but slowly lose what the original was trying to intend. But no matter how far it gets, at its core, the Counter-Strike logo will always be tied at its roots to Half-Life. Finally, we have Left 4 Dead, and I might have saved the best for last. There's a whole slew of cool Easter eggs hidden within this series' logo and iconography. Starting with the text itself, the blocky lettering is supposed to resemble the spray paint stencil style that would be common on the walls of an abandoned building. In this case, the building has been left abandoned as the result of a zombie apocalypse. The 4 in the game's title, which might seem like a simple stylistic choice at first glance, actually refers to the 4-player co-op gameplay that defines the series. In this way, the title is actually something of a double entendre, or a phrase that has two meanings depending on which way the words in the phrase are interpreted. In this case, the first reading is the one most people assume, Left 4 Dead, referring to the plot of the game, avoiding being left behind and killed by incoming zombies. But if your whole squad gets killed, then the zombies literally left 4 dead. The iconic Left 4 Dead hand further represents the name itself, as it's someone's left hand holding up 4 fingers, and it belongs to a zombie, who's dead. Also, the Left 4 Dead 2 hand has 2 fingers outstretched and 2 fingers half extended, further emphasizing its status as a sequel. The hand itself belongs to former Valve artist Andrea Wicklund, a fact I discussed in one of my other videos. She designed the various fonts scattered around TF2 and much of Portal's Ratman art. The reasoning behind using a real hand for the game's cover, as opposed to a 3D model, was explained in a Left 4 Dead blog post from 2009.
Under no circumstances would we use Photoshop. Left 4 Dead is a visceral experience, and its box art deserved the same approach.
This attention to detail, along with all of the other hidden meanings we've discussed today, just goes to show how cool it is when developers go out of their way to treat every part of their game with care and consideration. It's easy to look at a game and say the gameplay is all that matters, and for the most part that's true. But I think what keeps us coming back to a game, more than anything else, is when a developer nails every part of a game's construction. from the gameplay, to the art, and even to the logo. Thank you for watching.